Hello, and welcome to a special stream where we're going to learn something very special. I've been wanting to learn a working with authentication into a Next.js app, and today I have a special guest, James Quick, who is going to teach us everything we need to know in order to build a Next.js app with authentication. Hey, James, welcome to the stream. How are you?
Well, what's going on? I'm good. A little early morning stream action. I'm all about it. And two of my favorite things to talk about, Next.js and Auth0.
Awesome. Yeah, I know it's here in Romania it's 4 p.m. Here it's 8 a.m. or something.
hmm Yeah,
Yeah,
time zones are hard.
yeah, indeed, it's
But
hard.
I guess that's the cool thing with like digital world is you can have friends all over the world, but then you have to coordinate time zones.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the great part of like the online we can just meet with everyone and you just have to coordinate and get
hmm
the right time zone on. Hello, chat. Hello, Sergio, Codestacker, Taylor, Igor, Ziad. How are you? Welcome to the stream. Okay, so Auth0. Uh, I want to thank Auth0 for sponsoring this stream and for sending us James to teach us everything we need to know to build an app with authentication. To be honest, for me, this part, like working with the database and working with authentication and then payment, like these three are kind of scary because they just is in the backend side and you have to do it right. You have to just feel like you don't have to mess things up because then it will be really bad, right? So authentication is one of those, and I'm happy to have you show us how to do it the right way.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things about all these different services. Talking about payments, like things like Stripe, all these different SaaS platforms can help take care of the nitty gritty details that you don't necessarily want to mess with. Also, you're hopefully being a good example of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll be honest, I tried out Auth0 bit. I looked at some of your tutorials, which were very good. And I kind of see like it's pretty easy to set it up. I mean, I was impressed. Like, yeah, even with Next.js, it has the SDK, right? And you can
hmm
so easily have it set up, and then you can only allow the users who are signed in to read certain pages. So I think in today's stream we should build something like that. So a Next.js app where we add authentication, and then we only allow those who are signed in to access maybe the dashboard or something. We can figure out along the way.
Cool. Perfect.
Yeah. All right. So tell us how should we start? What would be the right way, or I guess one of the ways. There are multiple ways, I assume.
Do you have a Next.js application already created? Or are we
Uh,
starting completely from scratch?
no. Let's start from scratch. Let's create maybe auth0 next.js folder, and or yeah, open it in VS Code and start from there. I guess it.
Sounds good.
Okay. Let's open folder auth0 next.js. All right. So an empty folder, nothing in there. What's next?
So I would usually run like the npx
Mm-hmm.
create next app command.
Okay.
I don't know. Usually it creates the folder for me. If there's probably a flag. Do you know right offhand? Is there a flag to say like put it in the folder that we're already in?
Yeah,
That
it
makes
does.
sense.
So
Okay.
create next app and dot. I think that's the. Let's just run it and see how it works.
Okay, that makes sense actually. Things
Yeah.
are happening. It's a good sign.
Yeah. Exactly. Let me zoom in here a bit so we can see. Okay.
And if anybody has any questions along the way,
Mm-hmm.
um, obviously about anything, but more specifically about authentication and all that, let me know. I'm paying attention to the chat as well on the YouTube page.
Awesome. Yeah. Jason says Next.js app with authentication. Let's do it. All right. So there we go. We have a Next.js app and we have a public folder pages and styles and all of that. I guess next we need to add auth0, right? Or
Yep. So the first thing, so you can look at, actually go ahead and go to the dashboard in Auth0. Go ahead and log in.
okay. Yeah, I just created an account today. By the way, if you
Sweet.
want to create an account in Auth0, I have a link there in the pin message, or you can find one in the description.
Yep. And
Okay.
everything we're doing today is free tier, by the way, just so people know.
Yeah, awesome.
So in the top left, if you see where you have like Florin Pop 17, so that's the name of your tenant. And a tenant in Auth0 is basically a group of applications. So if you have like, if you want to share a user base and authentication methods that you configure, like logging in with Twitter or Google or things like that, if you want to share those things across multiple applications, you can just put them in the same tenant. You can create multiple tenants. You can just have one, which is probably what we'll do here. So anyway, you already have your tenant created. I think when you go through the sign up process, you have to create a tenant. So you'll have it by the time you finish the sign up. And then if you want to hit the create application button,
Okay.
and you can give it a name and it'll ask what type of application it is. So they kind of have these different categories because the authentication methods behind the scenes are slightly different. Not something that we need to specifically know. The main thing is that Next.js is considered a regular web app because it can keep a secret. So if you think about a single page application, there's no way you can include an API key or a secret key inside of the front end because people can go and get that and then use it themselves.
Yeah.
When you have a backend component like we do in Next.js, it can keep it secret. You can use environment variables and not have to worry about those getting leaked. So yeah, in this case, it would be the regular web app.
Okay. So I select the regular web app, create. Okay.
And what's kind of cool, well, yeah, you can kind of walk through and then I'll guide you if you need it because I'm curious to see what your reactions are.
Yeah, but as I said, I kind of did this today. So
okay.
Yeah, I selected Next.js. I saw here that there is some kind of a documentation which guides you step by step, which is pretty cool. Okay, and yeah, well, I'm not sure if we should share this, but here is everything we need for the .env local file. I guess I can delete the secret and all that afterwards. But yeah, okay, so it says, let me zoom in here. Okay, get your application keys.
And we'll go to the settings tab and grab that in a second.
And we need to add these, like callback URL and then a log out URL.
Yep.
So what
and
are
what
these?
that
Like,
yeah, so if you get down into like OAuth 2 is an authorization workflow for basically like if you've ever logged into one app and it says, okay, we want you to authenticate with Google so that we can access your Google contacts, or we want you to authenticate with Twitter so that we can then post a tweet to your account, that sort of thing. That granting of access is OAuth 2. And then there's OpenID Connect, which is basically the same thing, but on top of it, not only doing like delegated authorization where you grant permissions to do certain things with Twitter or Google, but you also can use that as like, now you're logged in my application. So anyway, like those details aren't super important. The main thing to understand is like it's a redirect process. So we redirect from our application, we send the user to Auth0, they redirect the user back. And so the callback URL is like after the user logs in, where does Auth0 send the user back to? The call out logout or the logout URL is after the user logs out, where does Auth0 send them back to?
All right. And where do we add this? Is in the settings part?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is a little, it's a little interesting here because you have to go back and forth between the quick start tab and the settings tab to do this. But yeah, so it's in the settings tab.
Okay. Actually, let me copy this long one.
And Jason in the chat is asking, should I sign up with GitHub or Google for auth? When you sign into Auth0, log in with whatever is most convenient for you. And then when you create an application, you can configure how other people log into your app. If that makes sense.
Yeah, good. So then here we need to go down to this one, application URIs.
Yep.
So yeah,
the callback.
And then, all right, and this one. So basically, yeah, when we log in, this will redirect to this URL. And basically, this is kind of something we have to do in Next.js as well, right? Like we
Yep.
have to create this path. And also, like when we publish to our own domain, the app, do we change this localhost 2000, or can we add multiple, or what's the process there? I
Yep.
just like
Great
I
question.
do
You just
https
do,
victorianpop.com/ something like
yep.
this, or I
You
okay.
just have a comma in between. So comma space,
Comma.
and then, yeah.
Okay.
Which I wonder, it is, yeah, if you look in the like the kind of the fine print notes underneath it, it says multiple valid URLs by comma separating. Which I haven't actually like, it's funny watching other
Okay.
people use your product because I've never specifically read that. I just know. So I was trying to double check that we do have that covered, that this is how you do it.
Awesome.
So yeah, it
Yes.
would look exactly like that. Yeah. So after you deploy to Vercel and you have a custom domain or you have a Vercel domain, as part of your deployment, you would go ahead and update the callback URLs here to add that one.
And the logout URL as well, right?
Yep. So one thing is you have to remove the trailing slash. So like part of the security stuff here is that these URLs are very specific. So if they don't 100% match what is expected, then they're not going to work. So the trailing slash would actually give you an issue here.
Okay. And what about the application login URI? Why is this empty, or we don't need anything here, or?
This is if you're like hosting your own login page, which we are not.
Okay. All right. So this is it for.
But make sure to remove the trailing slash in.
Oh, here.
3000. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yep. And then
Good.
This is one of the feedbacks that we've kind of continued to have is the save button is not obvious all the way down at the bottom.
Yeah.
You knew to go down to it, but that's one of the things we want to make sure people do.
Yeah, or maybe just update as you go. No problem. All right. What's next? Do we go back to the Next.js, or I guess?
Yep. So you can go back to the quick start, and then from there, you should be able to follow. Like the next one is install the package, and then do the environment variables, and then we'll see the coolest part is actually like the step after that, where you mentioned having to create the API route for API/auth/callback, and I say like you have to create it loosely because Auth0 does like so much of that for you. It's actually really neat. So we'll start with installing this, and then you can go ahead and add those environment variables to your env.local file while that's loading.
Yeah. Use. Oh, this is just should be a secret here, I guess. Well.
Yep. So if you look in that first bullet point, that's a command you could run in the terminal and just get like a random. You could also just type in something that's 32 characters long. Ideally, you would run an actual command later, but for now, you could just type in some random things.
Okay. Good. So I create a .env and put this. And does it have to be long or something?
Just it has to be 32 characters.
Oh,
and you'll
32.
If it's not 32, you'll see an error, and it has to be at least 32. So you could
at least 32.
you could just go all the way up.
Okay, like this. Okay, and secret and all that. We should not show this, but
well. Yeah, for the time being, obviously that's fine. And one thing, if you open back up the .env again, so just to cover really quickly what these are, the secret, the top one that you just created, that's the secret that's used to sign the cookie. So you don't actually do this yourself, Auth0 package does this, but it uses that secret to sign the cookie that then tracks the user back and forth in your application. The base URL, the client secret, that's the one that actually comes from the dashboard. So you got a client ID, which is a unique identifier for your application. It's not secret, it's public. You can share that as much as you want. The Auth0 client secret is actually the secret key associated with that client. So you wouldn't, in theory, share that. Although after this stream, you'll just go ahead and like delete the delete that app, inside of there.
Okay, good. Add dynamic API route. So you were talking about this pretty thing.
And
All
have you done? Are you familiar with dynamic routes in Next.js?
Just I saw it in the previous stream with Jesse, and now
Cool.
in this, like, yeah, I kind of know what they do. So basically, they handle all the requests kind of in this, like, yeah, maybe you can explain it better. I know, but I don't
Yeah,
know it that well, so I can explain it,
sure. Um, so yes, go ahead and open. So you have your API directory, and then inside of that, you want to create the auth directory. And then the file is this weird syntax for a file name where it's the brackets and then dot 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 auth0 bracket .js. And what that means is like Next.js is going to forward any request to /API/auth/ something to this handler. And so this handler at one of the props that like with the request incoming request object as a prop to your API endpoint will include that dynamic path of the URL in a variable called auth0. So by doing the brackets and the dot 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 auth0, that's saying I want to get access to whatever this fragment is and call it as a variable auth0. So then based on that, if that fragment is login, I could do login. If that fragment is log out, I could do log out. If that fragment is callback, I can do the callback stuff. But the cool thing is, again, like auth0, we'll see this in a second. Like you just write 2 lines of code. Auth0 is actually generating multiple routes based on that behind the scenes. So they're actually creating the route for login, log out, a me route, which provides information about the user. And then also the callback route, which is after you log in, Auth0 sending you back to the application. There's some things that have to be done to finish that that authentication flow, and Auth0 does it for you, but they're creating the route that handles that.
Awesome. So yeah, you were talking about 2 lines of code. Basically, this is all. This is all you need to have all of those 4 routes: /login, logout, callback, and me. Just with 2 lines. Yeah, this is like pretty cool. Just have to do that. And then, like, I see here, they say we have a user provider component, which we need to wrap our main component with, and then we have access to the user, or what this does.
We'll have access to a use user hook. And so inside of the use user hook, predominantly what you're looking for is the actual user object. Yeah.
All right, so let me do this as well.
And while you're doing that, the cool thing about Next.js that's actually like important to talk about and for all the stuff that we'll do is like the difference between the stuff that runs on the server and the serverless functions and API endpoints or server-side rendered pages versus the stuff that's like strictly in the browser. So this is actually kind of wrapping more of the front end so that you have access to those hooks like you would in any other React application, where you'll have a use user hook and you can get the user and conditionally show items in a nav bar. You can show the user's image and name in part of the nav bar, like whatever you need to do with it, you can get it from there.
And yeah, one question I have is like, can we use auth0 on a static generated site? Like if we want to just host the simple HTML, CSS, and JavaScript of the project, we don't have a backend, we don't have a server. Can we use it to have authentication on a static site? Or if we still need some kind of a server to do this?
So you asked me this before, and I had one response, and I think now it might change. So maybe in that, if it's completely static to like where you do an export and you actually have no API endpoints, then the authentication stuff wouldn't work because you have to have those dynamic routes. Alternatively, you could use the React SDK. So the React SDK is meant to be strictly on the front end, and you could incorporate it that way because you still have this hydration process that you can tap into things if you want. But that'll typically, like, probably more likely what you would do is your truly static pages would not be gated, like they wouldn't be behind authentication. So you would separate out in Next.js, like certain pages are gated and do require authentication while other pages are completely static and we don't care about them being gated at all. If you're doing that sort of mix, then you can absolutely still use the Next.js SDK.
All right. Okay. So in theory, you still kind of need to have a bit of a server to handle some of the things. like the protected. So let's say if we have a /dashboard page, which can only be seen by the users who are authenticated, we need a server to make sure, like, yeah. But
Or you could use the React SDK, which has a similar setup and it gives you a similar provider to wrap your application with, and then a similar hook to get the user information. You can make, you can create a custom component in there. We actually have it in our quick start to make a decision like this one requires authentication, and it will check if there is a user that's logged in, show the component. If not, send them to the log out or log in route.
all right, yeah, that will be interesting to explore. Okay, good. So now we wrap the user provider, and now we can just use the routes we created, right? And
Yep.
you can. All right, let's do this. So on the, I guess I can put this here to be easier to see. Okay, and on index.js, I guess here, npm dev. Let's see what we have now.
Jordan says hi in the chat. Good. Well, I don't know where people are. I was going to say good morning, but Jesse Kosacker is also saying Next.js includes your backend. Those functions will run a serverless function, so no actual backend server is needed. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So yeah, you still don't need like a full node server. Like you could still deploy to Netlify and Vercel and have all the functionality that we talked about. If you were to do, the caveat to that is if you did a completely static export where you literally just get like already pre-generated HTML files, then you wouldn't have, I don't think, I should check this. I don't think you would have that rehydration process or those serverless functions available to you if you did a complete export. But you can still do static pages and do like a Next.js build or whatever, have static pages, server-side render pages, and have your hooks or your endpoints in the backend to handle authentication.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. Okay, so on this page, we have all of these by default. I guess let's just get them out and maybe show, I don't know, a button to log in. And if we're logged in, we can show something about the username or something like that.
Yep.
Okay. How do we do that?
So do they have, if you, do they reference the use user hook? Probably not yet, but I can show you how to do it. Also, one of the things we need to update in this, oh, there you go. Yeah. Is if you scroll back up a little bit, it shows you like an anchor tag.
Yeah.
Which is what you need, but in Next.js world, they want you to use their Next.js link tag. So that comes from like you can import link from next/link.
Yeah.
And we need to update that quick start to reference that, which I am gonna make a note to send to the team.
Okay, and now here we can have just a link component with an A tag, which can say login, and here the href will be /API/auth/login, right?
Yep. And I think now in Next.js you can, because this has always been a little bit weird, but I think you can remove the actual anchor tag and just have the text login inside of the link tag. If that
oh
makes
yeah,
sense.
and I knew that in the past you had to have some kind of component inside the link tag, but
yeah, it was always a little weird, I think.
Styles not
but I think this will
defined.
work now.
Yeah. We don't need that. All right, login. What will happen now? Okay, there was some error there, but
so this is a brand. So Next.js just, this is another thing I need to, we need to figure out. Next.js just shipped 11.1. And so as part of 11.1, I don't know if this still happens when it's published, but as part of 11.1, there's that little flash of an error. Everything still works, so you'll see it unfortunately every time, which is not a great look. But we just have to figure out what is missing since the 11.1 update for Next.js.
Okay. Yeah, and I was now redirected to my auth0 kind of domain, right? My like the URL of the app.
Yep.
And I can log in. And yeah, I'm back here, but I don't have yet the code to show the user stuff. So let's add that. We can import use user hook from auth0, and then we can get the user from use user. And
I think you've got one extra R in there, user, instead of use user.
Yeah, thank you. And now we can show the user, like, let's see. Do we have the user? If we have, then we show the user. Otherwise, we show the link to login.
Yep.
Stop something.
Oh, well, I'm not sure.
I think this. Yeah.
Oh, you just have to have something in it. It won't let
And
you do
then-
an empty one.
Hello.
And you can, if you want, you could
name.
you could go ahead and that should work. Yep. And then you can duplicate that login link and make a logout one as well. Yep.
That's what I wanted to do. Link, and this will be logout.
Nuke in the chat asked if I am a Next.js contributor. I am not a Next.js contributor. I was more talking about providing feedback to our team at Auth0 on how to figure out what's going wrong with the new Next.js update. So I'm not even a contributor per se on our Next SDK. I've made like contributions for docs and stuff, but I send feedback along to the people who maintain it.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so now we're logged in. I can see the name. Oh, I just zoom in a bit, and I can log out. Okay,
you'll see the error, but it'll still work.
But today when I tried, I didn't see that there. Maybe
you may not have started with a brand like.
Yeah.
Next.js 11.1 is, I don't even know, like days old, I think. So if you were using just 11.0, you wouldn't have seen it.
Okay, yeah, probably.
So that may have been it.
I used some kind of what was it? Oh, yeah, it was not this process. So. All right, yeah, and you can sign in with. It's interesting to have GitHub. Oh, I enabled it. Go ahead.
Oh, when you were working with it.
Yeah.
And that may be, if you want to show like the social connections, just to show people what that's like. I wanted
to show. So if we want to have multiple connections enabled for the app, right now we have username, password. I mean, let me show it. So if you log out and then log back in, you can see that we can log in with GitHub, Google, or email and password, right?
Yep.
Because they are turned on here. Let's add maybe Twitter. Remove these and add Twitter. How would we do that?
Yeah, so you would, and you can certainly do it if you want to. You will have to go to the Twitter dashboard to create an app and get the credentials and stuff out of there, but we can do that if you want to.
Yeah, let's do that.
Cool. So you can start in authentication and social. Yep. And create a connection.
Just a second, I need to put our hats down. Because it
was yeah.
Okay, and now do we have something which doesn't require us to create an app on the like on Twitter, something simple?
The only thing, no, because that's how this workflow works. Like they have to implement OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect for us to be able to work with them. I think that's true. So yeah, those things are going to be required. What is cool though is that Auth0, when you create a new application and a new tenant by default, it has a test credentials set up for Google. So that's where the Google login came from. Like you didn't have to configure that one, so you could do that one. And then with GitHub, you had to go to GitHub and create the application and get the So we can either do that with Twitter now, or if you just want to share like how just talking how you created the same thing in GitHub and then enter those credentials in Auth0. Either way is fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot click now on GitHub, but I just clicked here, and then I did continue. Let's do Twitter, I guess. And they say here what you have to do in a nice dialogue. Okay. And we need to go on I guess developer, Twitter developer, something like that.
Developer.twitter.com. Yeah.
Developer. Let's go to Twitter and see what's the. Okay.
Yep. Coding Fire says hello. What's going on?
Hello.
Also, Adrian says you should use TypeScript.
Yeah, no. I'm not a fan. All right.
Not a fan of TypeScript.
Now here, what they do? Go to Twitter. No, developer portal.
Yeah, and there should be. I've done this before, but it's been a little while. So project and apps probably, or you may have to. I think with the V2 stuff, you have to create a project first. You can start on
Project
that.
name.
I think. Yeah.
Auth0. Yeah, accept. Next. Use case. Teaching, building, exploring the API. Sure.
Yeah.
Project description. Learning
fun
how
stuff.
to use Auth0 stuff. Do we need to wait for it to add an existing app or create a new app?
So this would be create a new app, I think.
App name. Auth0 app. This app is already.
Oh, this is a unique. Yeah. I'm sure there's been plenty of people that have done the same thing to test out the Auth0 and Twitter connection.
I'm sure this.
That's the cool thing about my initials, JQQ, is I can add JQQ before or after anything, and it'll be unique.
All right. Now again, I have these. I guess I can delete them afterwards. I deleted Auth0.
I think you had it on the farthest tab.
Oh, yeah.
All
right, so consumer, what's that?
So I think I wish you click on the setup guide thing button and on the Auth0 page in like the top right corner. And I wish
I know it was
bigger. So there's like
there was a page before.
Yeah,
there's I went on a page. Wait, to GitHub.
I'm not sure. I've never actually set up GitHub, but in Twitter, there's like you have to do extra stuff to enable like the three-legged auth thing. So we should probably follow those steps pretty closely if you start from the top of that.
You mean this?
Yeah.
Twitter will generate an API key in a particular application. Make note of this while setting up the app. Use the following values.
So we'll come back to that, and then we need to enable the three-legged auth. And the three-legged auth is, I believe this is true. Starting from our application, I mentioned before, like in Auth0, we have these redirect URLs. So we start in our application, we send the user to Auth0, they redirect back to us. That's if they're handling like email and password authentication. If they are then sending you off to Twitter, we send the user to Auth0, they send the user to Twitter, Twitter redirects to Auth0, Auth0 redirects back to us.
Oh boy.
So that's what the three, Again, like we just have to do the configuration. We don't have to like do any of that stuff. But that's what the three-legged auth is.
But interesting that, I guess the API key secret is this, the consumer, or that's another API?
I think it's a different thing.
I mean, do I create app settings now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And then
because
in authentication,
those callback stuff, right?
Yep. So in the authentication settings in the bottom, go ahead and click edit on that.
Authentication. Okay, edit.
Yep. And then you'll start with the three-legged auth, and then that's the stuff you're looking for.
Okay, so callback URLs. I guess your domain. This is my local host or the Auth0 domain I have.
This is Auth0 domain. Yeah. So we can, if you want to copy that, paste it over, then go back and copy the domain and replace
Where
that
do
part.
I find that URL?
It's a combination of like your tenant. So it should be like, in this case, it should be florinpop17.eu.auth0.com. What I would do just to be sure is like paste in what you just copied from the callback URLs.
This one.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And your
and then do you have like a clipboard history
app
that you use? Okay.
No,
It's
I
very
think it's
handy.
no, eu.auth0.com.
eu.auth0.com.
Okay.
And let's just go back and double check it because I'm pretty sure that's it, but we can double check it just to be sure. So if you go to your application, it'll be like in your application settings.
Auth0. Yeah,
So
this
yeah, and you
one.
can copy that if you want. But yeah, EU for you because you're hosted in Europe, and then .auth0.com. Yeah.
Okay. Oops.
I think you.
Just... Yeah, so that one. Then the website URL, the same URL, or
Let's check. Do they have like back in the Twitter setup stuff?
sorry, no.
Yeah. So under the Auth0, and then going back to the guide that we were at. So under authentication, social,
Twitter.
create a connection, Twitter. Yeah. Taylor Socks had to drop off for a call and is back. What's going on?
Yeah, hey.
Oh, also Green Passion had a great point that the domain is in the
Yeah.
in the .env as well. Yeah, that's a good point.
Good job. Yeah, so the same, your domain. So I guess it's the same with the callback. So
Yep.
I'll just use that.
Yep, I think that makes sense.
Your domain, and then that.
All of that is optional. Yeah, you can double
Okay.
check back in those settings just to be sure, but I think you've got it.
App permission, select the options that fits your requirement. By default, application will be granted read-only permissions. Okay.
So in Twitter, those permissions, like there's probably more than two, but like there would be either like read only is basically like you can read stuff. The opposite of that obviously is like you're creating an application that you want to be able to post to Twitter on behalf of a user, but we don't want that.
Yeah. We just want to read. Okay, and now.
Yep. And then scroll back up to the top of this page, and then on the keys and tokens, that should be your consumer keys, which may have been those ones that we saw before. I thought since it didn't say consumer that they weren't it, but yeah, go ahead and regenerate those, and then you should be able to see them after you regenerate because I think they hide them after the first one, and then you can copy those over.
Copy here, and then copy here. And I guess create should now work.
Yeah, and then you'll have to enable that in the application. Yep, and you can actually do it on the page you're on right now.
Oh,
either way is fine, but they had a little window for
check.
For you to enable it from there.
Oh, okay. Locations.
Yeah.
And then
just a little toggle box.
Yep. All right, so now on our app, go away.
Nuke is saying they've never used Auth0 before, but it seems quite useful. Yes.
Yeah,
it is pretty sweet. Cool. Like I love talking about it because if I were building applications myself.
Yeah, look at that. And we can sign in with Twitter now. And we can authorize to see the tweets, see your Twitter, see account you follow, mute and block. Yeah, pretty cool. Cancel. What happens?
It will give you some sort of error. Yeah.
Okay, good. So let me quickly, before I forget, just regenerate these. I don't want them to leak somewhere. And I'm going to just where is it? Because I already had GitHub, I'll just allow GitHub for now. Connections.
Berend in the chat is saying used Auth0 before, but had trouble adding data to users and let other users access data from each other. That's actually it's actually like I would consider one of the pain points as well, but I've become comfortable with a solution. So like Auth0 I use Auth0 to manage the users, like emails and password and the authentication flow if they're using social connections, that sort of stuff. And then any information that I need about a user after that, I will store in my own database along with whatever other data I need stored. That way, at that point, you can use the sub property of the user in Auth0, which is the unique identifier, basically the user ID. And you can use that to create a user in your own database and then use it to query like the user's data in your database as well. So if you have a user record with, you want to add like your favorite color as a piece of their profile information, part of that is also going to be the sub property, the unique ID, and you can query data in other records of movies they've created or blogs they've created based on that same user property. So I will say that it is a little tricky, but especially if you like talk through it and get the basic setup, then it's not so bad after, because you're mainly just like querying your own data like you would building an application regularly.
Mm-hmm. So you basically have to save the user info in your database, or like if you want to like edit those. And
I often will. So we have a management API where you can go and like do everything that you can in the dashboard from the API. I would just prefer not to have another API that I have to like learn to work with. So I use like, I'm already storing data in my own database, probably most likely. So I just want to be able to interact with the additional user information that I need, the way that I do the other data.
Okay, because maybe we have some kind of a user profile saved in the database which has more data about the user, so we just want that.
Yep. And you can actually, I was actually working on this yesterday afternoon of doing a similar thing to that article that you talked about, the Stripe, Supabase, Prisma, Auth0 integration, which is really sweet. And so in that dynamic route where you did the 2 lines and Auth0 creates those 4 routes for you, you can actually customize the callback. And so what I do in the callback route is, before I let Auth0 handle the callback like they normally would, I will go and check to see, does this user ID already exist in my own database? If not, go ahead and create them. And part of that is like, I could create them with the default property of is premium. So if you're doing something that's paid or like is subscribed or something, go ahead and set them up with that. You can also create like their Stripe account, and that way, and then save the Stripe ID in your user stuff that you store. That way you have like, now you've got your own world that you live in. Auth0 is just handling like making sure the authentication process happens successfully.
Okay. And how does Auth0 handle, like maybe someone logs in with their email first and then they log in with Twitter or something like that? How would we handle that in the app? So
those would
need to check the email or something.
So those would be in Auth0. Those would be considered 2 separate accounts to start. There is a way to merge accounts. Like Auth0 will allow you to merge them if they are using the same email. I'm not sure. So the potential issue with that is if you needed to propagate that to your own database. So you'd have to like know when that happened and then make that change in your own database as well. But that's hopefully like a relatively uncommon situation where you're just, I mean, I've had that issue like once, I think, with any application I've ever worked with. So it's not super common, but that could get a little tricky.
Okay. Green Passion is asking, can we customize the appearance of the Auth0 login box?
Yes. So you can customize that. They've got like branding and logos and things, so you can definitely customize that yourself. The one question we get asked a lot is like embedding that login into your own site. So if you wanted to have your own page that is your site /login, that actually gets a lot trickier, and it's something that we don't recommend as much, just because of how much effort they've put into making sure that going through the universal login is what this is called. About how much effort they put into making that secure, that they don't really recommend people doing that in their own pages. But I will say that's one of the things that people ask for and kind of want as well, is the ability to just build their own login form. And there are ways to do it. It's just obviously not near as simple as this, where you don't have to code the form at all. You just send the user to the endpoint.
And how much you said that we can change the logo and the color, and is there?
And you can actually add, I haven't done this myself, but you can add custom HTML and CSS, I believe, as well.
Oh, okay, that's nice then. Okay, I know this is for learning Auth0, but I registered for the architecting Next.js. I don't know if it's cool if I share the link to register. Not sure what you mean, Jason.
Oh, this is for learning Auth0, but just register for the architecting. I don't know what architecting. I don't know if that's a specific thing or if he's saying he just joined this to learn more about Next.js.
Oh.
And if you're asking about this link, like for the YouTube video, yeah, absolutely share.
Mhm.
This is not a private or gated thing at all.
No, this is public. Okay, so what should we do next? Maybe have different pages. And so right now we log in and we show, yeah, the data here on the page.
Super exciting.
Can we bring it to the next level or something? I think we have 15 more minutes or so.
Yeah.
Let's do something else, something more interesting. What will be the next level of this?
Yeah. So yeah, creating a protected page would be perfect. So if you want to create another file inside of the pages directory, that's how Next.js works. If people aren't familiar with that, it will automatically create that as a route. So you can create a new page and then just put some dummy data on there, and then I'll show you how to protect it. Jason is saying the Next.js conf link. Do we have a Next.js conf link?
No.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is, Jason, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Dashboard. All right, so we now created the dashboard page. So we can do / dashboard, and we see hello. Well, I guess I can say dashboard. All right. Sweet. And here on the page, we would like to do this part where we show the user data. So let's see. We first need this.
And you could, depending on how you want to do this, you could totally copy over all that logic. You could also create like a header or a nav bar component that uses that same logic and then share it between the two.
Okay, let me process what you said.
So that, yeah, well, I guess in this case, it's a little bit different because you know the user is going to be, or you will know the user is logged in at this point. So yeah,
that's why. So I was thinking that I need to check if we have the user, but we should have the user, otherwise we won't use user, right? Yep. So right now we should see this. No.
So the way the hooks work is the first time you load the page, it is basically making a request to the Next.js API endpoint, like the me endpoint, to get the information of the user to see if they're logged in. And that means that like the page will load and then it's doing that on the front end, so that the user is not immediately logged in. What will happen though, when we protect this page, it will server-side rendered protect it, which will make sure that like you can't get to this page unless the user is already logged in, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah. So
that is, if you add another destructure for user and is loading, you should be able to check. So you can do a condition on like that whole div, the inner div or something, and just say like only show the username if we're not loading anymore.
Like this?
Yep. And you might have, I think does it work like that? So you don't even have to have, you can render nothing if it's loading is false. Does that work? I'm surprised it's not saying you have to have.
No, wait. So return.
Well, yeah, that would be is not loading.
Yeah, is not loading. And yeah,
if it's finished,
if it's loading, let's just say div loading.
Yeah.
Like that. Okay, so it was loading for a second. Okay, and then this popped up. But yeah,
the link. You've got the the Next.js link. Okay, so that you can see that is like it's finishing loading. It's got the user information. Then it's trying to render the other part. There you go. Yeah.
So that's all. Oh, so it doesn't have it, as you said, on the
because
first
it's
load.
yeah. So it's basically like loading this page, and then it's using, because you're not server side protecting it, it's loading the page, and then on the page it's trying to figure out whether the user is authenticated, which takes like a small amount of time, but
Mhm.
something. So that very first render, it was still loading to figure out if the user is logged in, and there was no user. So that's why you got the undefined of
Okay.
user. But again, when we protect this, it'll be fixed,
Mhm.
and you
How
won't have to
do
check
we?
for loading.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask, do we get anything else from the user book?
Yeah, let me check.
User is loading. But yeah, in the
There's a couple
meantime,
of things, but I'm not sure. Those are the two things I use it for. But yeah, in the meantime, if you want to open up, I'll send you a link in Zoom. Actually, let me get a more specific link with page auth required. So I'll send you this link in Zoom. This is from the actual GitHub repo. Like if you go to the repo, you'll eventually
okay.
scroll down and they'll show you this page. And so there's this there's a hook in Next.js for server-side rendered stuff, which is called get server-side props. And get server-side props allows you to, like, as the request for this page comes in, you could go to your database or you could do other things, get information, and then send that directly into the page component.
Mhm.
So that information is available to the page component before it even loads. Like, it's going to be there as it loads.
Okay.
So this with page auth required is like a higher order function, and you can use it just like it has there, where, yep, if you want to copy that line, this whole thing is basically doing the get server side props, but with page auth required is also an implementation of that will check
Okay.
the status of the user. If the user is not logged in, it will send them to it'll send them to the login page. If they are logged in, it will let the page render.
Okay. And do we still need to use the user hook to get the user data, or with page auth require will pass in the user data?
So it will pass in the user data, but we could still use the hook if we wanted to, and we should. So go ahead and reload the page just to show that it works first.
Okay.
And then now get rid of the is loading logic. So go back to what you had before of still use the hook.
Oh, still use the hook. Okay.
Still get the user from the hook, but get rid of the is loading logic. And hopefully
Okay.
this will show that, like, just by the time this loads, like as it if you refresh now. It doesn't. Okay. So you were right though. It does pass in the user as a prop to the component. So that's the way it works.
So
So if
here
you
user like
destructure,
this.
yep, exactly.
So we don't need the user hook anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
Yep.
awesome. So basically, yeah, we simplify. What I've seen is that so there are two ways to do this. Let me think. So I saw one where they did something like this: export default dashboard, and then like this, the structured user, and here was the return. I think no, not return. We already have it. Something like this instead of all this. See, so it wrapped kind of the component.
The component itself.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never
Dashboard is not defined.
um
Export do it done. I think it's well, maybe I'm wrong. But let's see here. Yeah.
there is a
Yeah, never mind then. I think I saw somewhere.
there's
Let me.
something similar to what you're saying that I just haven't used though. I always use it with the get server side props.
My page. Yeah. All right. Good. I just saw like they didn't. I think they didn't have the get server side props, and they just wrapped the. Oh well, never mind. Good. So let's go back to what was working. I'll send you if
Yeah.
I see it again. All right, so now it works. And if we log out, we are sent to the login, to the home
And if
page.
you, so try to, in your URL, try to go to the dashboard page, like just type
Yeah,
in /dashboard.
dashboard.
And this should redirect the user over
Oh,
to
nice.
login.
Yeah, so we have to log in too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. But yeah, we can have a nav and just show the login button if we're not logged in, and then if we're logged in, we can show the dashboard button and the logout button.
Mm-hmm.
All that. Mm-hmm. Cool.
The
Yeah.
other thing, I don't know, we only have a couple of minutes for what we scheduled. The other thing would be kind of the equivalent of with page auth required, which is with page API.
Oh,
With
yeah.
with API auth required, which means if you create API endpoints and wrap it with API auth required, it will make sure that the user is logged in to be able to access that API endpoint. Otherwise, it will return like a 401 or a 403. I can't remember, but it will return an error and not let them have access to it.
Yeah, so basically, let's say we want to make sure that the user is signed in order to retrieve something from the database,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
That will be the logic for it. So pretty much the same thing. We just wrap it.
Just with
Now we don't
API
have
endpoints, yeah.
yeah, we don't have something specific from the API, so it will be tricky to set up, but yeah, that will be the logic for it. Okay.
Yeah, those two things, the with page auth required and with API auth required, and the dynamic route thing. Like I could rave about the Next.js SDK a lot, which is very similar to a lot of people like Next Auth. I tried that out recently. It's kind of tricky to get set up because you have to, like, if you're doing email and password login, you have to set up like an email provider to send the confirmation email templates and password reset templates. So there's actually more that goes into it than here. But people really like it for the social connections. But the SDK itself, like how you work with it, is almost exactly the same as how we have it in ours as well.
Okay. All right. Yeah. This is good stuff. Now we just have to use it in a real. Yeah, I'm going to do it in my daily streams. In the 0 to 100K challenge, I'm going to build something with it, and like use it in a real scenario, with the combination with the database. And yeah, this is like, it's kind of easy to set up. This is what I like about it. To just use a couple of methods and which are already provided, and you all have all this functionality, which is pretty cool. And at the same time, you don't have to handle all the, like, login with GitHub and log out, and then maybe even password reset if you do email and password, stuff like that, right? So,
Yep, all that stuff is taken care of for you. And we didn't even get to like multi-factor authentication if you want that set up for extra security. And I did a video recently on doing like logging in with your fingerprint or like your eye scanner on your phone, like device biometrics. That stuff is kind of cool.
yeah, I think I saw it on the Auth0 YouTube channel, right? Yeah, this
Yep,
one.
that one right there.
Let me.
I like that. I like that graphic a lot too.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Let me send it in the chat because it's nice. Cool. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today and teaching us how to use Auth0. It's quite straightforward, but yeah, I mean, I can't wait to use it in a real app to see exactly how it works.
Yeah.
If I have some questions or anything, I'm going to send them over to you.
Yeah, let me know. Happy to help.
All right, chat, if you have any questions, we have a couple of minutes left, or if not, thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed this. It was straightforward. It's easy. I really like what's easy. I just enjoy easy things. You don't have to, because I know, like, a couple of years ago, for a job, I had to build my own authentication and database and all that, and it took me 2 weeks.
Yeah.
to learn and do it. It still was good. Like in 2 weeks, I've learned how to do a
Mhm.
full authentications, and I also had like multiple user types, so like admin,
Mm.
moderator, and
Yep.
regular user. And it was a lot of work. So something like this simplifies it so much, and it's more secure from my point of view, because you just allow Auth0 to handle everything for you, so you don't have to worry about making sure you don't mess up something and just expose some credentials or who knows
Yep.
what.
Yeah, which is a reminder to delete the application in Auth0 for
Yeah,
that secret key.
Let's do that right now. Where did I delete it?
By the way, someone, I think it was Ayush earlier, said, today I was learning Auth0 by watching James, and I just saw this video. What a coincidence.
Let's go. Settings. Yeah, here, I think. Delete this application. All authorized apps will need to update with the new client secret. I can do that as well.
Yeah, so you could rotate, yeah.
So that will basically just change the secret and all that.
Yeah, it should just change the secret. Yep.
So,
The other information would change the same, just the secret.
Name
Um,
of the app.
Yeah.
What was it? Auth0 Next.js. Cool.
Yep.
All right.
And then just make sure from there, don't scroll up. Well, I guess it's blurred out, so you can scroll up.
No. It's
in the settings. It's blurred out. If you go to the quick start, it gives you.
Okay.
But only if you're logged in, obviously.
Mm-hmm. All right, but I'll close this just for safety. All right.
Fair enough.
Thank you all for joining the live stream. Thank you again, James, for joining and teaching us. Thank you Auth0 for sponsoring this stream. And I'm going to continue my journey of going from 0 to 100K every day. Tomorrow at 4 p.m. you can find me, and I'm going to continue working with something with Auth0. So that will be fun. All right. I wish you all have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.